This is a continuous improvement movement reserved for the few with the grit to prove it.
Good morning, this is Maria, and I am here with Calvin Williams, and this is the Ticket to Freedom podcast. On this podcast, we discuss continuous improvement as it pertains to current events. Today, we are going to talk about an article just released by CDO Trends titled Delta Decodes the Passengers' Brains. So, sounds very exciting. Our talk for today, decoding brains. So when I hear decoding brains, I immediately go to data. So that is what we are going to talk about because Delta is democratizing data. It's making sure data is available for everybody within the organization in order to enable continuous improvement and empower employees. What do you think about that, Calvin?
I generally like that idea. I think about why companies tend not to do that. And there's always a level of data security and data sensitivity and that kind of thing that could be used, in ways that aren't productive. But I think the opportunity to gain is much greater than the risk involved, right? Especially if you're able to curate that data to where it's sanitized and made available to people, as on demand or as they need it, right? I think there's another conversation around, in theory, you want to make sure everybody has the right information so that they can make the right decision at the right time and all that stuff. I think there's, a little bit more work to be done around, helping the computer live the experience of the decision maker so that they can sense, see, hear, touch, taste, smell what the decision maker's sensing so that they can, know what information is most relevant for that unique situation. I think there's a lot of work to be done in that space, but, a lot of time data is organized in silos. There's a certain level of privilege that you need to get to certain information. And then there's like summarizing that data in a way that it's useful and, given the situation and all those things. So yeah, there's a lot to be done on truly synthesizing data and making it most relevant for the moment. But I think the general concept of democratizing data in creating a true Kaizen culture of everybody every day, that's paramount.
Yes, I agree with that. With data, it's such an interesting thing because you really needed to make decisions. Sometimes either you have a lot of it or even you have a lot of it, but you can't access it. And there is a lot of layers to that onion that you can peel to make data like a really democratized asset. So for example,
Right.
with Delta, Tracy, and let me know, I'm interested to know if this has been your experience previously with any company you have worked with. So Miss Tracy Watkins, who is Delta's CX Insight Innovation Manager, said, finding the right nugget of information that we need in order to make good decisions is sometimes like finding a needle in a haystack. Have you had that experience?
Oh, absolutely. And there's a certain thing, the way we say it is like there's a whole ocean of data out there, right? And what specific data point do you need for the moment and how hard is it to get to it? And most people, even with all that data, the way most people behave in those environments is they they just go with their gut because you do got to make a decision. You probably got to make a lot of decisions in a given day, and you just don't have the time and resources and all that to go dig for hours for one data point to make the one decision, right? Um, Decision paralysis is a real thing. It's, can be called a corporate medical condition, right? And people are waiting on decisions and business is getting slowed down by the slowness of decision making. So if your access to data is slow, your ability to retrieve data is slow, then your decision making is slow. And sometimes that slowness is not worth the trouble of just making the call and running with it, right? And most people aren't just sitting in databases studying data so that it's ready in real time, right? Most people are
Mhm.
dealing with the realities of life, day-to-day life.
Right.
Um, so yeah, there's that whole thing. But I'm a big fan of being clear on what you're trying to achieve first, because when you're more purpose driven, then you're going to be a little more deliberate about getting the data that's relevant to your mission, that's relevant to your goal or your purpose. So if I know that my goal is to, increase customer satisfaction, um, that goal should be incorporated in every decision I make.
Mhm.
So let's say a decision comes up and do we, if I'm Delta, right? Do we
Mhm.
switch out one brand of peanuts for another, right?
Right. Mhm.
The customer satisfaction goal sort of takes precedent over this one's, X amount per bag and that one is Y amount per bag. Really, the first thing I want to know is how is it going to impact customer satisfaction,
Mhm.
right? That's number one. And then if it's going to have a negative impact, I don't need any more data, right? Or,
Mhm.
if it's not that big of a cost savings impact and it's going to be a major customer satisfaction impact, I don't need a whole lot of data analysis to say, wait a minute, this is taking me away from my purpose. It's a no-go. Let's find a different solution, right?
Mhm.
Go back to the
Right.
whiteboard and find a better solution. Something
Right.
that serves my bigger priority, but also meets some of the other maybe uh, non-top priority business goals too. So
Mhm.
that's why
That,
improvers like, hey, you start with your goal, you get crystal clear on what you're trying to achieve first. Let's align everybody behind that, and then let's get into a cycle of actions to drive improvement. Obviously, you got the thing that's most important to improve, but then you got, at least sustain everything else while you're driving that top thing.
mhm. Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah. And in Delta's case, one of their main goals with democratizing this data is make the company more customer centric, make sure all the decisions they're making are based on what the customer wants, what the customer needs, their feedback, and obviously have the entire company engaged into driving improvement for that customer. But
Mm.
now we talked about the data piece. They deploy a way for everybody to access data. Now what? Is that really going to drive improvement? Or what else do we need in order to make that click a little better?
Okay, and I'm glad you brought this up because this is something I can go on and on about. But yes, giving people access to data is great. Again, like a lot of companies have a ton of data. There's an ocean of data out there, and people just aren't randomly studying all the data so that it's ready to use when it's time to use it, right? So having data, yes, that's empowering. But I think there's a lot more to truly creating a culture of Kaizen, a culture of continuous improvement that goes beyond just, hey, here's access to data, right? You can look at it like the expression that, I don't know how many times I heard growing up is knowledge is power.
Mhm.
As an adult though, I see it a little bit differently. It's not just having knowledge that is power. It's the application of knowledge, the exercise of that knowledge is where the power comes from, right?
Mhm.
Um, Having power alone isn't even useful, right? It's how you apply that power, right? So in order to truly empower your people, you also got to remove some of the other blockers from applying the knowledge and the power, right? Things like red tape and bureaucracy and the inability to manage change and all the various stakeholders that need to give a blessing in order to to do something, right? I think you empower people by saying, by teaching them or providing them a structure that they can operate within and say,
Mhm.
hey, we're going to grant you a license to improve within this structure. Make sure they are crystal clear on what those boundaries are. So when they have that license to improve, when they have the incentives to improve, right, you're going to be rewarded for innovation. You're going to be rewarded for trying. You're not going to be punished so harshly for failure as long as you extract learnings from those failed attempts and those experiments. Um, we're gonna institute coaching cycles at the immediate manager level with you so that you can get a better sense of what you can operate within, so you can get more expedient feedback on an idea for improvement that you have, and that you have some degree of license to improve. So I think, and that's just the tip of the iceberg. So I think there's a lot more a company can do to empower people to apply all this incredible democratized data to actually drive real improvement that then translates into better customer satisfaction, which is what Delta's going for in this case.
Mhm. I love that point, Calvin, because sometimes people have, the data, but then they can't do anything with it because they don't have the
Right.
authority, they don't have the incentives. So hopefully this is not the case for Delta, and they are really putting things in place to allow people to act on that data that they have been provided with. And I think this is also a very interesting topic because the way they are democratizing data is through a partnership with an AI company. So nowadays we hear AI here, every single day we have something new coming from the AI world. And this is
Mhm.
a huge example of how a large company is using this new technology to drive continuous improvement, to empower employees. And like you said, we cannot forget that human piece of
Yeah.
allowing people
Yeah.
to,
That's huge. I mean,
yeah,
we've had three industrial revolutions, right? And there's a lot of people who say AI is the fourth industrial
yeah,
revolution. And I could subscribe to that. I do think AI has the potential to drive some real transformation. In the previous podcast episode, we said that, we could probably tie 5% of earnings to
yeah.
AI contributions,
Mhm.
which, I'll take 5%, right? That's
Right, and it will continue to grow. That percentage will
it'll,
continue to grow as
it'll
the
continue to grow.
technology gets better and we as humans understand the application better, because I think there is a little gap there on how we understand the technology and how we're using it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I'm
Yeah.
a big fan of, hey, if you are a forward-thinking company, I'm partial toward manufacturing. I grew up in
Mhm.
manufacturing. I know the challenges to tech adoption in the manufacturing space. I'm a big fan of, hey, partner with a innovative tech company, partner with an early stage tech company that's trying to innovate in your space, right? That doesn't mean you have to be a customer. Maybe just be an advisor. Maybe be somebody that they can pilot things on a small scale, different ideas, different developments on the tech space to see what works. But as a early, we started a tech company 7+ years ago. I would have done almost anything to find a manufacturing partner that
Mhm.
that could basically serve as sort of an incubator for some of the ideas that we were developing. Every manufacturing company should have that kind of partner in their pocket, because what it does is it gives some direction for the development of the tech product, and it gives it real life laboratory to try things, and as long as you manage it well and try things on a small scope, but small enough scope so that the risk is minimized, and you could really have a lot of fun with that. But yeah, back on the people empowerment piece. um yeah, giving data is golden and essential, but there's still a lot more around power, right? There's the root of empowerment is power. And if you got a leadership mindset that is, I'm going to empower myself as much as I can. I'm going to basically extract power from the people and give it to myself and demand that they get my approval for everything they're thinking and doing, right?
Mhm. Yeah.
And basically constantly push out more demands on them so that they don't have time to think for themselves and things like that. If you got that kind of authoritarian kind of mindset, then you're essentially depowering people. But
Right. The
empowerment
results
means
are not going to be
distributing.
great. Mm.
The results, they're going to be limited to you, limited to your thought process, decision making capability, and et cetera, your intelligence level and all the rest, right? But if you truly empower people, you're tapping into their intelligence, you're tapping into their drive and motivation and enthusiasm and ideas and all the rest, even tapping into their horsepower to get some of those ideas pushed through. I think, you got a much better recipe for empowerment. And then the application of the data comes in to support, right, that movement toward, the North Star that as a leader, hopefully you've set for your people.
That's right. So with that, we can say that democratizing data is amazing, but always make sure it's aligned with your strategy, that it's aligned with what you think is most important to improve, and most of all, empower the employees with the right tools and the right authority to use that data. And with that, we're going
Absolutely.
to close.
And even incentives, right, to motivate. Yeah.
And the incentives, yes. So
Yeah.
thank you so much for listening today. This is the Ticket to Freedom podcast, and we'll hope to see you again tomorrow. Thank you.
Just in time, not a second slow. From the top flow to the shop flow, come on. Everybody, let's go.